You're listening to the Nerd to Know Media Network. Join us at nerdtoknowmedia.com.
Broadcasting from the Blanchardstown Centre, this is Phoenix FM.
This is 92.5 Phoenix FM, community radio for Dublin 15.
Hey everybody, it's JB Jeremy Borash, and you are listening to Darragh O'Connor on the...
Welcome to the Wrestling Rewind, the only wrestling podcast by fans who don't hate wrestling.
Alright everybody, it is Tuesday here on Phoenix 92.5 FM. This is the Wrestling Rewind. My name is Darragh O'Connor, and we have a show for you this week. We're also on the True Penny channel and nerdtoknowmedia.com. As I said, I'm Darragh O'Connor. I'm not alone. I'm joined, you may have heard him, joined by the one, the only, the undefeated 1-0, Mr. Martin Harty. How are things, Martin?
Not a bother, Darragh. How's yourself?
I was better before I watched the show.
I'm interested to get your thoughts. Like we said earlier, it depends on how you view it.
That's true.
If you view the show in the wider context, it's dreadful. If you can kind of separate yourself from all that, I thought it was okay. I
mean, let's put it this way. I wasn't upset by it. When I was watching it, I was like, oh yeah, this will be grand, because we're trying to be the podcast that sees the good in wrestling, that doesn't hate it. And again, I didn't hate it. I was more just puzzled by the whole thing. And then I was like, oh wow. So I wasn't underwhelmed. I was just I was whelmed by the whole thing. I was like, this isn't too bad, but it kind of is. And it as a show itself, in context, it's really bad, because when you put it in, right, this is January 2001. And 2001 was probably one of the best years for wrestling, and definitely the end of the Attitude Era. Holy heck, this was just... It's probably one of the worst shows you can see in context. It's like an episode of Thunder with more steps.
It's funny in that everything surrounding the show is kind of more interesting than the show itself. So
hold on. So we will get to that. But I mean, I just want to keep it on the show for a moment, like the actual show, right? Yeah. So a warning, when I knew it was bad, Martin, right? When all the recaps were from Thunder.
Oh yes.
And that's where I'm like, oh my god,
you're getting the B storyline.
We're getting the B story. But the whole pay-per-view was the B storyline. That's when I knew we were like, we are not getting a good show here. This is not good. Everything was from Thunder. Every single thing they played on that show was from Thunder. Also, this was, you should just, instead of calling this sin, you should just call this, Bookily. The pay-per-view. There's not a star to be seen, with the exception of Scott Steiner. He was the only star. Everyone else was just there to be a boy. And there was it's the boyiest boy pay-per-view I've ever seen, where all the lads go out there and the young fellas, and they're killing each other, and they're putting on these brilliant matches and stuff, and then none of it matters. So again, what I will say, Martin, when something from the backstage does actually happen, please do mention it, because you told me one that blew my mind before we went on here. I think it's wonderful.
But even before the individual bits and pieces, so this is Sin. This was originally Sold Out. It was, yeah. So
yeah.
They've rebranded from Sold Out. Apparently, what the plan was here was you would have all your big regular pay-per-views, your Starrcade, your Super Brawl, and they would stay the same. But they had a plan apparently to change these kind of B pay-per-views to a theme around the 7 deadly sins. Yeah. So obviously you had Sin, and then in a couple of weeks we're going to review Greed.
And then there's Bankruptcy.
And then there's bankruptcy. But it was just so apparently the plan was to do these around the 7 deadly sins, which like sounds like a cool idea because you're thinking, oh yeah, greed, envy, wrath, vengeance. But like, what do you do whenever you get to like, WCW, sloth, WCW, gluttony,
WCW, pride, and then it would be more awkward in a couple of years.
You'd have to put it on in June.
Yeah.
WCW, lust. Like, I suppose Big Papa Pump could headline a pay-per-view called Lust.
No, but can you imagine what Mark Madden would be like during Lust?
Well, there's the other thing.
He wasn't on the show.
No, he got before this show. He got fired.
Good. I mean, oh no.
Apparently, he'd been given like shoot interviews to different dirt sheets, and like just railing on the company, just talking about how it's getting sold, how it's absolutely out of control. Like apparently, talked a load of shit about Scott Hall, and so like.
I mean, buddy, points for effort, but not smart. You were hanging on by a thread, like.
Oh, he was, yeah, like
he was hanging on by a thread.
Apparently, he'd been taken aside a load of times. So never mind all the kayfabe stuff or the shoot stuff or whatever. Apparently, he was taken aside a load of times and said, "This stuff you are saying on commentary is not cool."
No, it's like horrendous.
It's not
actually terrible,
cheeky or funny like Jerry Lawler. You just sound like a predator.
Yeah, that was it. There was a section when I was watching the show, and there was a cat fight between. I'm sorry for using that phrase. That's the phrase that was used.
That's what it was
at the time, and I was just like, I was waiting for it. There was no screaming inappropriate things. I'm like, oh, this has been improved. It's amazing. I don't feel uncomfortable watching the show now.
Yeah, sometimes it wasn't even what he said. Sometimes it was like
the noises he'd randomly make.
Yeah, like like two women would be wrestling, and one of them would get rolled up, say, so her legs would be in the air, and all you'd hear on the microphone would be, oh Jesus, oh God.
Like I need to have 6 showers. Like,
yeah, say something. Just say something terrible instead. Don't make that noise. Say something really misogynistic. Don't do that.
Oh my God, this was somehow worse than what you were doing before when you were saying reprehensible things.
So he's gone.
He's gone.
The whole thing with, like I say, sin and the idea for the 7 deadly sins, and then of course just the creme de la creme, the pièce de résistance at the end of the show, Sid's leg. Just, oh my God.
No, that was great. But my favorite part of the whole thing was, one, they fired their biggest star, which again, okay.
Oh my God, yeah.
But no, the best part was throughout the whole night they build up who is the mystery man, and
Jesus,
it's the road animal, it's the road warrior animal.
Warrior animal.
You're like, what? Why? That's.
And I mean, we'll get to that when we talk about the match.
I mean, Ernest Miller would have been better.
You could write on that main event.
Norman Smiley would have been better.
It only went on for 10 minutes. You could write a thesis on everything that went wrong with that main event.
We'll get there. I mean, folks, there's just so much. When I say this is a show, you are in for you're not in for a treat, but you're going to hopefully be more entertained with me and Martin talking about it than the show. Because, I mean, I was like, can we go early? Because I'm so angry that I want to talk about it beforehand. And I was just like, right, no, I gotta calm down. I built some of this Lego that I got when I was in Milan, and I'm like, okay, we'll I have a much more calmer head. I'll have my notes. But as I was making the notes, I was like, Jesus, yeah, this was real bad, wasn't it? This was a real bad show. Like, we were watching this obviously 21 years removed.
Yeah.
Imagine you did a radio show, because there was no podcast back then. Or imagine this was on now. Imagine coming on and being like, man, we paid money for that.
And at the time,
it was like $60.
Setting you back $50-$60, yeah.
And you're sitting there going, imagine we stayed up to watch this at 1 a.m. and we come on to do a podcast afterwards. I would be like a demon.
And then
what is going on?
And then a week, like if you'd picked this, like you say, all right, I can only afford one podcast or one pay-per-view this month. We give this new WCW a sin. We'll give it a go.
Give it a go. Yeah.
And then a week later, WWF put on maybe one of the best Royal Rumbles ever.
Because that's what would have happened. That's what we would have done. Because we would have done that. I mean, most people doing a podcast would have been like, "Ah, sure, look, we'll give this a go," or whatever. And I mean, it wasn't like it was bad TNA. It wasn't like it's a bad WDB show. It's such a weird show where you're like, it's literally like they took FCW with nobody, go back and watch one of the FCW shows, but none of them are good. But then they randomly sprinkle in their top talent and do nothing with them, and you're like, right. So it's not good as a water the garden kind of thing and watch some people grow. Which would be cool, because it's not good as a top show.
And particularly when we're watching it with hindsight, like you say, you don't get that thing. Oh, at least we'll see some up and coming guys, because the company's gone in 2 months. So,
I will say there were some good points in this. I did genuinely. I thought the cruiserweight stuff was fantastic. 2 really good cruiserweight displays here. Really enjoyed the hardcore match, except for the end was really dumb. But it does possibly have one of the worst main events of anything ever. I mean, this should be in The Hague. It's terrible.
The thing is, though, as well, that it's not like the really, really like offensively bad ones. Like we've done some WCW pay-per-views that like you're angry coming out of them, and it's kind of a pity that the company is like. Obviously, with hindsight, we know the company is now 2 to 3 months from just going completely out of business, and they seem to have gotten themselves out of the slump. You know, like you say, it's by no means a great pay-per-view or anything even remotely like that, but they have gotten over the Russo nonsense. They've gotten back on track with some, like we say, some of the undercard here is quite good. They're sort of building new stuff. You know, Hogan's gone. Goldberg's
Sorry, hold on. I have to interrupt you there. So I was kind of just flicking through what's next, on Wikipedia here, because the next thing on the network, and that's what we're going by, because again, it's some of the stuff you can't find. There was a show called Super Brawl Revenge, right? Later in February, and you have another loser leaves WCW. And it's like. And what did they know what's going on, or I mean, it's bizarre.
I think around this time as well, there's like 3 or 4 pay-per-views in a row where they have the winner becomes the commissioner.
Yeah.
So like just being the commissioner at that stage just means nothing. So like, stick it up in a match, like.
Oh wait, no, actually, sorry. The next one on the timeline is Super Brawl Revenge. So sorry, we spoiler there. It's on the network. So I mean, that's not even a pay-per-view. That's just a special show they have. But if you're actually looking at that card is more stacked than this one. This actually has some stars.
So that's not the actual Super Brawl then, is it?
No, it's like a special event they did.
Weird.
Yeah, it's very weird. I don't know. I mean, we'll get there. Or actually, I don't know.
No,
they say here that it was the pay-per-view. So, but I mean, I totally forgot this thing existed. I just thought Greed was next. Ah, well.
Yeah, but like, I think part of the reason that this one ended up disappointing so much is because it kicks off with a big opening. It actually looks like they have a really good crowd. Like there's none. It's not at the stage like a couple of months ago where even camera angles couldn't hide the fact that huge portions of the arena were empty. There's a big crowd there. They're up for it. They're all cheering. They're all going mad. You get a really decent, cruiserweight opener. In fact, it's actually a while into the pay-per-view. Now, there's all the usual WCW stuff of that didn't make any sense. Why is that happening? They've overbooked this, blah, blah, blah. But it's a while before you get to something that you could call an objectively bad match. So I think part of the reason that it hurt so much in the end is because you could have, like you say, back in the day, got this and ordered it. And for the first 20, 30 minutes, you're going to be like, all right, maybe we're on to something here.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's just so puzzling. It really is just so puzzling. And I mean, I think if they had because as you said, that's what threw me there, where they had, these were the smaller B-level pay-per-views, but they didn't commit to them. It wasn't like when the WWE, they had their Raw and their SmackDown. And I mean, I think you would see where this kind of evolved into it, that kind of concept, because it just seemed like this was like the trial run for that kind of thing of splitting your roster. But they didn't split their roster. They just put loads of like no names on, and then they still had their main event. And it's like, you either fully go or you don't do it. And I mean, it's just such a disjointed show. Like, to be honest with you, right? If we had had more matches like the beginning of the card, it actually would have been fine. I would have been like, look, there was a bunch of guys that nobody knew what was going on, but they went out, did the best they could. They wrestled for a belt that didn't really mean anything, because there would be a belt that doesn't mean anything. Everyone went home. Sure, isn't it grand? But no, they insisted in having two nonsense matches. One of the worst first blood chain match. Well, I mean, chain matches usually mess.
Yeah,
We'll get to
I
it.
have some notes on that one.
But I mean, it's like they were like, oh, okay, we're going to do this really cool idea, but we need to do this too. And it's like, no, what you're doing was fine. Just go back to it. And then the wheels fall off.
One thing I really noticed was the opening match there's no nonsense. It's two wrestlers, two really good wrestlers, who go out and they have a hell of a match. Right?
Yeah.
There's no like massive spots in it. But there's no run-ins, there's no gimmicks, there's no overbooked, convoluted nonsense. The
gimmick is they're going in to wrestle.
Yeah, and it was really refreshing.
Yeah.
And it's almost like NXT got really good in the sort of late 2010s.
Yeah.
Partly because Vince, I don't think he even realized it was there.
No, he didn't know it was a thing.
So they were kind of left to do their own thing. So these undercard guys weren't having all these shocks and twists and swerves thrown on them. Like, nobody noticed them, so they could just kind of go out there and do their own thing, and the best bloody thing on the show.
Yeah, they're like, oh, we can just wrestle, Yeah. And I mean, that the sad part about this is that is the pillar of the show, right? That's when you're watching, you're like, this is when it's the best. So by the time you get around to the main event or whatever, you're like, and again, we'll get more into it, but if you're watching the show and it seems very disjointed, it's because it is. I mean, I don't believe they thought backstage stuff with this. The show was changing as it was going out, so maybe they did just change it on the day. You don't know. Yeah. That could have happened, because like, if you read Brian Alvarez's book, he does kind of say a lot of this kind of stuff where that was happening, where they're rewriting the show as it was going out. And I mean, yeah, like, it does seem like, but it doesn't seem as disjointed as other Russo pay-per-views that we've watched before.
I think Russo's gone at this stage. So he was in and out in that period. He would have fallouts with them. And I think this was one of the periods when he was gone. But there's a match in it, the Young Dragons versus Jamie Noble and someone else. And they even say on the pay-per-view, the commentators say, all right, folks, this was an impromptu match. This is a bonus you're getting. And like, I'm sitting going, something's happened there.
Yeah.
That's covering for something or stalling for time, or because there's absolutely no reason you would put an unannounced match on the card, but it's like the Young Dragons versus Jamie Noble. So it's not a big, it's not a huge surprise.
The worst thing about it is the match was great. Like,
oh, those Young Dragon guys,
they're unbelievable,
brilliant.
But all right, so let's get into this. All right, so Sin came everybody's way from Indianapolis, Indiana, from the Costco Fieldhouse. Attendance was just under 7,000. And your commentators are Tony Schiavone and Scott Hudson, Mean Gene Okerlund, Mike Tenay, and Michael Buffer got paid his like 10 million or something.
God, yeah,
yeah.
for his 3 minutes
The
work.
first 3 minutes. I mean, I do genuinely hate the way he won't shut up when they're walking to the crowd, when they're walking down. Also, the fact that Jeff Jarrett at this point was a 4-time world champion, I was like, I actually rewound it. I was like, he's what? He's what? Oh my god.
Yeah, I mean, I like his entrances, but I don't think he's particularly great.
No, I mean, he does the let's get ready to rumble thing, and you're like, oh, that's great. But I mean, I just don't like the way he doesn't shut up. He just keeps going. You're like, we get it. You don't need to keep talking. You know, we know who he is.
Fighting out of Indianapolis. He is the master of the armbar. He owns more than 6,000 model tractors. Yeah, he talks them the whole way. But what I don't get about him is that he talks them the whole way down to the ring, and he's bigging them up and up and up, and all their achievements. And then they get in the ring, and he is Big Papa Pump, and you're waiting for him to go, Scott Steiner, and he goes, Big Papa Pump, Scott Steiner. What? No, man. Like, blow it out at the end. Come on.
He's just a tease. That's what he is.
Yeah, but I don't understand how they couldn't hire someone for a fraction of the price to do something very similar but legally distinct.
Well, I mean, they could have, but they just didn't. I mean, that's the only thing that's consistent throughout all of this is him. It's like
the company is hemorrhaging money, and they're paying this guy. I think it's legitimately like
it's like 5 to 10 million.
Yeah, it's
ridiculous.
Every time he does it, it's like $100,000 every time he says that.
Yeah, so his contract worked out to be 5 to 10 million a year. It's wild, like.
It's mental.
But I don't understand. Like, no, to be fair, if someone said, look, go out there and say nonsense for like 10 minutes, I mean, you're not going to say no. So, I mean, fair play to him. He got paid. But at the same time, you're like, really? You could hire like some lad on the street to come in and do that, and he'd probably do it for free.
Or, you know, backstage, just hanging around, you have bloody mean Gene Okerlund, you know, like.
And Mike Tenay.
Just
like, hanging out. Like,
you know, it's one of the, I think one of the reasons WCW is so fascinating, and in many ways even more fascinating than WWF, is it's because it was so bizarre. None of it makes any sense. Like there's a couple of really good books on the kind of the rise and fall of WCW, and I would absolutely recommend them to anyone because the way that company was run is fascinating.
Like I'd say, like the one that Brian Alvarez wrote is like The Rise and Fall of WCW. That's a great book. I haven't read it in a while now, but it is a really, really good book if no one's actually read it before.
I have Gay Evans, Nitro, The Incredible Rise and Inevitable Fall of Ted Turner's World Championship Wrestling. So
I'll read that. Actually, I haven't read that one.
Ridiculous long title on it, but it's very good as well.
Okay, I'll check that out because I mean, like, you do kind of like the backstage stuff helps, but when you're watching it, you're trying to be like, right, how did it actually play out? And a lot of the Rusev stuff is gone now, as you said. It makes sense. Not Russo stuff is gone now, which kind of makes sense. And but I mean, even watching the show, like, you could tell what they were trying to do, but then still didn't go the full way. And we'll mark the point that it happens, but let's get into it. So look, the first match, Chavo Guerrero defeated Shane Helms, right, for the Cruiserweight belt. This is a return to what we talked about when Eddie Guerrero was there, and he was having this feud with Billy Kidman, where they were going in having these absolute barn burner matches to open the show, but it felt like the belt genuinely meant something. And again, it's not surprising. It's Shane Helms with Chavo Guerrero.
Even without the belt, for a while there, and you actually get a glimpse of it. It feels like it again in this match. For a while there, it feels like the Cruiserweight division. Yeah, it feels like its own like proper division, and particularly in wrestling where you don't have like weight divisions and stuff because obviously it's all gimmicked. With the Cruiserweight title, it genuinely feels like its own division. Like it's not necessarily lesser than the world title. It's just
its own thing. Yeah, it's just its own thing. Like there's no big difference. And I mean, that was great because like watching this whole thing, I was like, right, this is actually a real, like, foolishly in my foolishness, thought that this show was that, you know, I was like, oh, here we go. You know, we're in for a good time. No. I mean, as soon as this match ended, and actually the ending of it was quite good. That little exchange to the finish was quite good.
Yeah,
Like it was that kind of chain reversal
yeah. Well,
into a brainbuster, which was really cool.
but that's what was good about it. Like the cruiserweight doesn't have to mean dives and flips everywhere. It means because like they're lighter guys, you can do these much more intricate moves, and then you can pull out like stuff like a brainbuster or whatever, kind of out of nowhere. You obviously couldn't do that with like a 300-pound guy, 200-pound guy, whatever.
No, and the crowd were into it as well. Like they were hot.
Yeah.
And then they started playing the video package, and it had all the Thunder stuff. And then out walks the Buckley of all Buckleys, Reno, my boy, walks out, and I'm like, oh no, here we go. Then Big Vito walks out, and you're like, oh no,
his brother,
who I didn't know this was a thing. Apparently, they're brothers. One is very much Italian, doing the hand signals and everything. The other one walks out looking like a rejected Marilyn Manson concert goer
with his rat tail.
His hair is disgusting. It's this manky, greasy rat tail thing. You're like, what are you doing? Just cut that off, man. And he again, Reno, like Big Vito, he'd go to WWE and do the whole Vito thing. Reno didn't, and you can see why. Like, I mean, there's no future in his career. There's no, this was it for him. This was his big moment.
Reno strikes me as the kind of guy who will be an absolute top guy in some really small regional company, in the Midwest.
So I'm going to correct myself. He showed up briefly in WWE for a dark match, and then was in the Alliance, and then he got fired because he went to the Heartland, and then he went because he was released in December 2001, so lasted a couple of months. And then went down to World Wrestling All Stars, and that says it all.
There you go. I bet he was a big deal in World Wrestling All Stars. Look, it was actually a fine match.
Yeah, it was a fine match, but I mean, I think
it was
hampered. It was hampered by that stupid storyline that made no sense.
Well, it's like you say, it was perfectly reasonable, perfectly acceptable, even perfectly enjoyable because they're two big guys slapping each other. Yeah. Thunder match. It wasn't a pay-per-view blow off, Like the only other thing I would say about it, because like I say, it was just very fine. The only other thing I'd say about it was that the commentators massively oversold what was happening. So,
but to be fair, dude, I'd much rather have that than them talking about Hogan.
Yeah.
Which is what they've done. I mean, at least you're like, okay, cool, right? I'm into Reno and Big Vito. Go on, go. And then you're like, they're not doing anything. Like,
well, what got me in it was they were talking about like Reno was the commentators kept kind of really overblowing the violence. Like, oh my God, Reno, he's your brother. You can't do that to your brother. I'm sitting there going, it's a clothesline. It's a wrestling match. Like, it's not.
He hasn't been headlocked. He's like, oh, he's got to kill him. It's like,
it's one thing if he was out there, and they built up some big dramatic thing where he was going to hit him with a weapon or something. But like, he hits him with like just his finisher, which is just a version of the Crossroads. And they're like, on his own brother. Oh my! And I'm like, this perfectly legal move in a regulated wrestling match that they've both of you agreed to be in. It's why are you overselling the drama of this?
Also, again, it's the first time I think they've ever mentioned their brothers.
Yeah,
it's kind of hard to be like, oh yeah, he's his brother. It's like they've wrestled before.
It's a wee bit like Edge and Christian, because I could have swore at an earlier, like maybe a couple of pay-per-views back, they were cousins. Vito and Reno were cousins.
I think there was like, they're both Italian sounding. One is more, but one is distinctly more Italian than the others. Like literally the full-blooded Italians. He's coming out with the hand signals and everything, being kind of racist.
Flag on his wrist.
And it's like, you're like, this is okay. We're about to cross the line here, but and then the other guy comes out and he's just, again with his little rat tail, like, and you're like,
it's just
surely they would share a gimmick, right? No, it's so weird. It's such a weird. WCW's weird, man. It's a
Yeah,
weird thing. It's a
but
weird pay-per-view. That's
like
all
you
I can
say,
say.
it was a match that came and went. It didn't particularly thrill. It didn't particularly offend. And
So,
I'll be very pleased if I never ever think of it again after
but I will
this.
say, if people are like, okay, well, what is a Bookley? What is a boy? Right?
Yeah,
Reno. He's
yeah.
like, you put up a picture of Reno, and that is exactly what a Bookley is. Because he went out and did the best that he could, and it wasn't good enough. But sure, we love him anyway, with his little rat tail.
I don't know whether or not to put so Jake Hager on Dynamite during the week had a really good match, and people are constantly down on him. Oh, he's crap. He's no good in singles. I think he's quite good.
Yeah.
So I think I'd have Jake Hager in my. I'm sort of over time slowly forming my like Bookley A team.
All you need is like a TARDIS where you can jump back and grab them, or even Bill and Ted's phone booth where you can be like have them all there at the same time. I mean, like this whole show really was made up of Bookleys,
Yeah.
but like it really was, and I'll call them out. But I mean, it's a shame. Reno could have been more like when he's nowhere near as good as Canyon, but you're watching him when you're like, actually, with a bit of work, it could have been like Canyon because there are some good moves in there, like the roll of the dice, as you said. It's a crossroads, but it looks really good.
It actually does, yeah. I think because he's quite built and stocky, it looks pretty good. Speaking of Bookley, man, I would have from the previous match Shane Helms in it. That
You can't though. He's like, I mean,
yeah, when he was on to be the Hurricane, but that 3 count
I love
gimmick they
3
have,
counts.
they're a
Wonderful.
boy band.
Yeah, brilliant.
That's class.
That should come back. They like again,
Yeah.
if anyone was listening for some reason from some company, do like a Gen Z like streamer gimmick.
Yeah, I can't believe that isn't a thing because it's so perfect for being a loves himself heel, but it's also awesome like if you somehow got over for being like a kind of an ironic babyface. Like it's
like the
brilliant.
3 count, the fact that the song is so terrible as well, it just adds to it. And every time you see it, like you're just starting laughing because it's so wonderful. It's like the best thing that WCW ever did.
The best thing about doing this gimmick is you don't actually even need to be able to sing because
they don't. That's the joke.
If you can't sing, if you're a bad singer, that makes it even funnier.
Yeah, I mean it's great. Like,
so yeah, okay, maybe not Shane Helms specifically, but I definitely have 3 count in my Bookley list.
The actual gimmick itself.
Yeah,
That's fair. That's fair. So look, the next match is surprising because it was added at the last moment, and it's one of the top 3 matches of the whole night. Young Dragons defeated Evan Cargelis and Jamie Noble. I don't know who Evan was. I was like, someone said Kaz, and I'm like, Kaz? I was like, no, it's one of the Young Dragons. But I don't even know who Evan Cargelis is. Can't remember his name.
Never heard of him.
He was in the he has a similar career path as our boy. But no, I
was actually interested because the Young Dragons kind of only formed in WCW in 2000, sort of late 2000, early 2001.
Yeah.
And we've seen, I think pretty much we've seen their whole career because they were only there for about 4 or 5 pay-per-views.
Yeah.
But they were always great.
Yeah.
So I kind of wondered what happened to them. And apparently one of them, I can't remember their individual names, but apparently one of them after WCW so just went back to Japan and became like an All Japan Pro Wrestling like mainstay. Like he was one of their top guys for years after that.
Well, here's one for you. So one did do that. Hitachi did that. And then the other one is known as Jimmy Wang Yang.
Oh.
So he did show up to WWE eventually. But Young Yang was known as Jimmy Wang Yang. And Kaz Hitachi is like is a huge star in Japan.
In Japan, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, and the only one who did nothing was your man Evan.
Yeah, I was kind of glad when I read that your man went back to Japan and really made it, because, like I say, every time these guys show up, they're thrown into these nothing matches and they make the absolute best of them. Like,
Well, here's the thing: around the same time as this, right? And it's surprising that he hasn't shown up randomly, but also not. I mean, the odds of it would have been very low. But AJ Styles was working Thunder matches
wow,
at the
isn't it?
like, So I mean,
It's not mad that they had him there.
Yeah, but it was like he was just starting out. He wouldn't be the AJ Styles for a while, but he
Yeah.
was working Thunder. So I mean, he could have been on one of these thrown out in pay-per-views. And you know what? If WCW had kept going, as you said, running these 7 Deadly Sins shows, he probably would have showed up eventually.
If I love this alternate timeline stuff, but I genuinely would have loved to see what Eric Bischoff would have done with WCW if he'd have bought it.
Yeah.
Because, like, right, WWF 2001, they are flying high, but I mean, it's about to not come crashing down, but they're about to lose that like real sort of constant top tier they're at. And if WCW had survived, they really could have maybe not made it big, but they could have been sustainable by promoting themselves as, the real wrestling alternative. We're not doing the stupid gimmicky stuff WWF's at.
Yeah.
You come here, you're going to get great matches, great wrestling, no bullshit. But obviously that's not what happened.
Yeah, it's a shame. I mean, but if you're watching this show, that's probably a match of the night. Like, very, it's either that one or the opener, because both are fantastic. And it does kind of show you that even as the ship is going down, there's still guys going out to work their ass off, and they did.
Yeah.
Like, fair play.
It's like we were saying earlier, you can tell the guys in this show who know that it's the end, because they're not even like Diamond Dallas Page and Kevin Nash are out there.
They just
They
don't
might
care.
as well be in like training.
Yeah.
Whereas you have these guys like Young Dragons, Shane Helms, and that, and they're going out and they're really putting on. They're really putting on their best effort. The only thing I'd say about the Young Dragons match was it just me, or was that finish very odd?
Yeah.
So there
Well,
was
I
like
mean, it
twist-
wasn't planned.
Yeah, so I thought it looked like a botch. So it was like a twisting corkscrew. I think maybe he was meant to hit it,
Yeah.
and the guy, he either missed or maybe the guy moved, because he stands up then and just sort of does a roll up, But apart from that, great match.
And I mean, I think the reason, the very real reason for that is because it wasn't planned.
Oh yeah,
No,
I thought you meant the finish, but yeah, the whole match was
the whole match. They were just probably calling it in the ring, So fair play. So the next match was Ernest Miller and Mike Sanders. So obviously they were hanging out in catering and needed less skilled guys to go out and fall around.
Yeah.
That's what happened. It was like Mike Sanders is a former stand-up comedian.
I was surprised he wasn't funnier.
No, I mean, this show, it was not very good.
Look, Ernest
It
Miller and Mike Sanders aren't going to go out, and they're not Punk MJF. I over the year or 2 years, whatever we've been doing this, I have developed a kind of a begrudging liking for Ernest Miller.
Yeah,
because he's great on the mic.
he is.
And he comes in, and then if you have Ernest Miller come in and do his ridiculous dancing shtick and do his trash talk on the mic, and then give him the actual match 4 minutes, and gimmick the hell out of it, I think he's great. Now, unfortunately, whatever happened in this match, I think maybe because the Miller was a baby face in it, and he's not as good as a baby face. He can't throw out those real funny vicious barbs that he used to.
It was just flat.
Yeah, so it was a wee bit flat, and then obviously that when the actual character stuff is a bit flat, and then the match isn't great, it's it doesn't really make up for it. And then at no stage was this described as like a no DQ match, and there's just like open hitting each other with weapons and stuff in front of the referee. And like normally it wouldn't bother me, but it's just that disqualifications are such a big part of the show later on.
Yeah.
You know?
And with this, it was just like, what? But the thing is, there was a promo cut. Mike Sanders was cutting a promo as well beforehand, and it was like, why didn't you just make this an ODQ match?
Just, yeah.
I mean, everything just screamed that it was going to be an ODQ match, but then it just wasn't.
Wasn't, yeah.
You know? But look, it was under 6 minutes. Ernest Miller won. Mike Sanders didn't. That's kind of all she wrote.
Yeah, and the match itself, like it had enough distractions in terms of run-ins and
Nonsense.
Nonsense just to make it like
it wasn't bad. It was
fine. You know?
It was fine. The next match was very annoying until the ending, which was fantastic. Because I mean, the last sequence was fantastic, except for all the whistling. Who was blowing the whistle?
Was that? Yeah. So
like, it wasn't Jim Duggan. It was, I don't know who it was, but it was the most annoying thing I've ever heard.
I think it was the referees who were. So this is the penalty box match.
Right. So this match is Team Canada versus the Filthy Animals, a penalty box match with Jim Duggan as a special guest referee. So obviously, to get everyone up to date, Jim Duggan was a turncoat who went with Lance Storm during his anti-American gimmick. Right. Filthy Animals aren't necessarily the most American people in the world, which is weird. You have Conan and Rey Mysterio, who Conan makes a thing out of his. It's very bizarre that that's where he went. And then you have Billy Kidman, who's there. Now again, Filthy Animals. It's a weird. It's a weird gimmick, but it's a weird pairing because everything up to this point that we've seen with Team Canada is jingoistic, anti-American. And the the Filthy Animals.
Doesn't Rey Mysterio literally have Mexico tattooed across his stomach?
Yeah. And Conan made a career out of, Viva la Raza. Like, literally, that's his career. And I'm like, you couldn't have picked someone else to do this feud. But okay, I mean, it was a good match. Billy Kidman, Rey Mysterio, Conan at his peak.
It reminds me of it reminds me of, oh God, it's really famous. There was some match in the WWF in the noughties, and the crowd is chanting USA, USA, and I think nobody in the match is from the US. I think they're mostly Canadian, and then maybe like one European guy. I think
I had Jericho. I think you were chanting
Jericho, and a couple of those guys, and the crowd's chanting USA. It's like nobody here is American.
Oh my God, I love it. But I mean, that was the first thing I was sitting there going, this is going to be a good match, but it's very weird. It's such a strange pairing, But I mean, like, Mike Awesome stole the show here, and I mean, it was surprising because he was kind of hidden in there. There was a bit near the end of it where he did an awesome bomb from one side of the ring to the other, and you're like, holy hell,
brilliant.
He's just killed whoever that was.
Just before we get into the match, we should explain the penalty box match. Now, this all ties into why I was so annoyed with the no DQ stuff earlier. So a penalty box match is whenever a wrestler commits a transgression during a match, which would normally be a DQ, or in the case of WCW, would normally be the ref looking blankly at it as if nothing had happened. What happens is they're put in the penalty box for a minute. So there's a literal penalty box outside the ring, and they have to leave and stand in the penalty box for a minute. And I think the whistling you heard was every time someone went in or out, one of the referees outside would blow his whistle.
Oh,
now
that was very annoying. That was a bad decision
because it's only a minute, but you would have there could be maybe 3 guys in the box, and they're in there within 10 seconds of each other.
Yeah.
So then out of nowhere you have this whistle going off, but the problem with it was that it was a tag match, so it wasn't a Texas Tornado. It was only one guy in the ring at a time.
Yeah,
right?
so there would eventually, basically, if someone was in a penalty box, there would be a one team advantage.
Yeah, well, I mean,
kind of,
but not really, because it was only 1-on-1 at any time, and you didn't even have a a team advantage if you had more men, because if you went in the ring when you weren't supposed to be in the ring, you got sent to the penalty box.
But that happened.
It just made no sense.
I mean, no, there's better ways to do this. This should have been a cage match.
Oh, any
Should have
other
been a cage
gimmick.
match. Like it's crazy. It's like the way there's the chain matches. Like no, it's very. We talked about this with the Punk MJF chain match. It's hard to do a
So
chain match.
difficult,
You
yeah.
cannot do it. But I mean, this was hampered by its gimmick.
Well,
But the end of it, I mean, that Mike Awesome bomb was.
was
I
amazing.
thought he put your man through the ring. I can't remember who it was. I think it was either Mysterio or Kidman. I don't remember who it was.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't Kidman. It was either Conan or Mysterio, because Kidman was involved in the Texas Coverly finish.
But it looked like it was well named, like the Awesome Bomb. But I think one of the things that's so frustrating about this match is Lance Storm, Mike Awesome, Billy Kidman, Rey Mysterio. There's a hell of a match there.
Yeah.
Why are you sticking this convoluted? Like, I know why, because it's hockey and it's Canadian. But why are you sticking this convoluted gimmick in it that is breaking up the flow of
a
what
match.
otherwise could be another? Like, if they had treated this match like the opening match, just go out and have a banger, this would have been brilliant.
Should have just called a Canadian street fight.
Yeah.
There you go. I mean,
if you want to do the hockey thing,
exactly,
yeah.
Canadian street fight. I mean, like,
just call it a hockey fight match.
hockey match, or
Yeah.
some nonsense. I mean, it's not hard. Like, just don't.
You don't need to build a literal penalty box and
It's so
bring it down
stupid.
to the ring.
You know what?
Although,
Well,
at least they called it a box and not a box-like structure.
box. Imagine. Look, I really enjoyed the next match. It was Meng defeated Crowbar with Daphne and Terry Funk for the Hardcore Championship. Now, here's the thing: triple threat hardcore match. Crowbar also one of my Bookley. He was out there, Book
Doing
with
his thing.
a big Bookley head on him. You know, he just looked like he did not belong. Looked like he needed a shower. Hasn't showered in ages. Daphne out there killing it. Daphne's the best. But right, I really enjoyed this match. This match was fantastic, except for the end, which was really stupid. Really stupid. But
I think one of the things about Crowbar was he seemed really confused about. I'm not sure if he just wasn't used to WCW hardcore matches, but he seemed really confused about what he was supposed to sell and what he wasn't supposed to sell, and for how long he was supposed to sell certain things.
No, my favorite one was right. So it look, to be fair, this went around the arena. They actually had a really good brawl. Terry Funk was great. Again, it's kind of, you're like watching Terry Funk going, I get why you left WWE because he wouldn't let you do this, but also you didn't have to do this. Could have went, but they're paying him more than ECW were, etc., etc. But you're watching, you're like, okay, fair enough. But then when it went to the ring, and there was an exchange where they were Crowbar and Meng were teaming up on Terry Funk. No, sorry, so the other way around. Terry Funk was and Crowbar were teaming up on Meng. And then Crowbar, instead of letting Meng be defeated, he slams Terry Funk with the chair. And you're like, why did you do that? You could have won the match. So then Meng ends up winning with his submission. But that's not the end, ladies and gentlemen. What happens then, Martin, in the real world?
So, Meng, and this is would become something of a recurrent theme at WCW. So Meng just wins the WCW hardcore title, and literally 1 week later, he would show up in the Royal Rumble as Haku.
Yep.
So do you remember they gave?
Idea.
Do you remember Chris Benoit told him he was going to leave, and they were like, "Oh, we'll make you the world champion," and he said, "Yeah, cool, but I'm still leaving." So they made him the world champion, and then he left. It's just it was kind of like a lesser version of that. But I mean, I don't know if his contract ran out, if he was just on a per appearance thing, or maybe because Meng / Haku is sort of famously known as like the real life hardest man in all of wrestling.
According to The Undertaker.
Yeah, maybe he went and he said, I'm going to WWF, and WCW said, no, you have a contract, you're not allowed. And he said, you know, what are you going to do about it? And they said, nothing. Please don't kill us.
I don't know. I mean, puzzling is not the word. I really hate the WCW hardcore belt. I think it looks terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, they should have smashed that up and should have just been like, well, we're stealing from you anyway. Let's really steal from you.
Yeah. I mean,
you know,
so,
I mean,
like,
here's what you should have done. Sorry, here's what you should have done. You should have taken the belt with him and attacked Crash Holly.
Yeah.
That would have been interesting. I mean,
done what Ric Flair did. Just go in. I'm the real hardcore champion.
Yeah. I mean, what are the ones you going to do? Sue? They're bankrupt in a couple of weeks. It's
like by the time it got to court,
it
would have been owned by WWF anyway. Yeah. I think your attitude to this match will just depend on your attitude to Naughty's hardcore wrestling.
I love it. I love these matches, man. I really do.
I'm not the biggest fan, but when it's done well, like we had some great ones a couple of weeks with Bam Bam, with Hack, with Brian Knobbs, and I thought there was parts of this I really enjoyed. So I know Crowbar is your bully, but whenever kind of Funk and Meng were just let go at each other, there's a brilliant bit where Meng is Crowbar has him pushed up against like a corrugated door, and Funk Crowbar's like leaning into his stomach, so his head's down, and Funk is behind him with a bin, and instead of hitting him with the bin, he just hoofs it at him. Just hauls it at Meng, and it comes round and comes like flat at the bottom and just cracks him right in the face. It's amazing.
I really enjoyed when there was a spot with the fence, and the fence somehow managed to bend around Terry Funk. And you're like, that's not what guardrails do. So stupid.
There was
so stupid.
Yeah, there was. It was maybe is a little too kick punch walk for me at times, but also at times it had some just brilliant, ridiculous moments.
So look, the next match, I'm not going to say too much about it. It was 12 minutes of a paycheck, where Natural Born Thrillers defeated the Insiders, who are DDP and Kevin Nash, who were legitimately like, we're done here in a couple of months. It doesn't matter. You know, they were working out their notice. Yeah. And it was for the tag championships. I mean, I haven't got anything else to say other than that.
Well, you can, like we were saying earlier, you can tell that the Insiders know the writings on the wall.
Yeah.
And you can tell that the Natural Born Thrillers are, this is our opportunity to make a name for ourselves.
Yeah.
So they're actually, Palumbo and O'Hare are in there really giving it their all. And in fact, there's actually some amazing spots through this match that are all Palumbo and O'Hare doing them.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you say, even DDP, who you can normally rely on to go out there and really, you know, give every crowd his best, even he clearly couldn't care less.
Yeah, no, he absolutely knew, as you said, the writing was on the wall, and it was kind of a point where you're just like, right, why are we here? You know, I felt the same with, I felt puzzled with Shane Douglas and Jen Rexon.
Well, firstly, that is not a chain match. This was advertised as a chain match. A chain match is when the two wrestlers are chained together.
Yeah.
A chain match is not when there is a thin, like, it's not even a chain, it's a bloody necklace hanging from the ceiling. So that's the first thing that's confusing about it. The next thing that's confusing about it is, so the goal is to get up a ladder, I assume, and get this chain. So it's obviously no DQ, right?
Right.
But then they spend 10 minutes just having like a work in the leg.
Alright, gang, that's going to do it for the Phoenix FM segment. If you're listening to this on the podcast, the show will continue after this break. If you're not and you're listening to this on Phoenix 92.5 FM, thank you for joining us live. Go over to Nerd to Know Media right now, nerdtoknowmedia.com, and get the rest of the show. Spotify, iTunes, all that good stuff. Check it out now. See you next week here on Phoenix 92.5 FM. You have nothing else to do on a Saturday? Do you like nerd things? Now check out Nerd to Know Basis here on Phoenix 92.5 FM, 5pm to 6pm, and then head over to nerdtoknowmedia.com for all of our shows as part of the Nerd to Know Media radio network.
Thank you for listening to a Nerd to Know Media production.
So, the goal is to get up a ladder, I assume, and get this chain. So it's obviously no DQ, right?
Right.
But then they spend 10 minutes just having like a working the leg, like a solid working the leg
It's so stupid.
match. And then
It's such a stupid match.
and then they get weapons out from under, there's ladders and
Yeah.
chairs and stuff under the ring,
Yeah.
and they get them out to climb up the ladder and get the chain. But you don't win by getting the chain. You
No.
just have a chain.
Yeah.
So just hit him with the bloody chair. Hit him with the ladder.
See, that would have made sense.
And then just to completely confound and confluster, it ends with Shane Douglas has secreted a chain in his knee pad, and he pulls it out and he hits him with it, and then he hides it from the ref and he swaps it out for the completely identical chain that has been hanging from the. But there's no disqualification. Why? Just what is happening?
I was left with more questions than answers. Shane Douglas was happy though. He celebrated. And he won the belt. And he said this ended because of a woman. Or started because of a woman. And I was very confused by that. And yeah.
Well, here's the thing. Look, even take out all the ridiculous nonsense around the chain and the no DQ and all that. We're not even watching the weekly Nitros, the weekly Thunders.
I don't think that would make it easier.
But we're only watching the pay-per-views, right? And I am sick of seeing General Wrection and Shane Douglas.
Yeah.
Like
every time we watch something.
And we're only watching the pay-per-views, and I feel like I've seen this match 600 effing times. I'm so bored by it.
That's exactly my reaction to it as well. I'm like, God, I've seen this before. Why have I seen this before? Now, to be fair, that's probably why they did what they did with this match, but they should have just called it a ladder match.
Yeah, or a weapons, or getting the chain means you win, or just something. But
it means you win.
But
oh God,
do you know what? In fact, maybe this was a stroke of genius, because the fact that I was just absolutely flustered as to what was happening the whole way through it distracted me from how bored I am of seeing Wrection and Douglas. So
maybe that was the point.
Yeah, maybe it was like a stroke of genius.
You we'll blind them with confusion, so you won't know what's going on.
Confound them.
So the next match. So a question for you, Martin. You're running WCW, right? And you haven't got many stars left, and you're like, right, we're going to try make a change here. And we're going to, push our main stars and, try go for the future. What do you do with your biggest star?
I'd
you
fire
build a company around them, or do you fire them?
I'd fire him in a kayfabe angle, and then sell the company 3 months later. So that
when this
he actually remained fired.
So when this happens, right? The pay-per-view dies because everyone's so bummed out. They're like, man.
It actually goes to show how over he still was. Goldberg still was at the time.
Yeah.
Because when the main event dies on its arse.
Absolutely, yeah.
Everybody is so depressed.
So like literally, you can just the air just goes out of the arena. Everyone's like, "Oh
Well,
man,
because
we just lost Goldberg."
let's say you're sort of even mildly clued in WCW fan, and you know that they're not actually firing like their top. They're only like majorly over gay, right? So you know he's either going away because he's injured or going away to make a movie or something, and then he'll be back. So even if you know that, you're still sitting there watching this show going, "Oh man, I know he's coming back eventually, but God, we got maybe 3 months, 6 months of WCW now without the only over gay." So even if you know that this isn't a real firing, like you'd still be really bummed.
Man, it's just so funny. It's the most clear. Like you don't see this in wrestling nowadays. You really don't. It's a time capsule of like people who believe wrestling is real, and the whole arena is like, oh,
There's
it's
actually
just sadness.
Oh yeah, and
It's
that
just sadness.
carries on. Like the main event is kind of kill, but it's kind of killed because it's dreadful. But it's
It
also
starts
kind
off-
of killed by this because the crowd is just in no mood for it. Like they're
no,
so depressed.
because they're not like it wasn't even like Goldberg was beaten fairly. It wasn't like he was beaten. It was the cheapest overbooked nonsense ever, and it was with Lex Luger. Nobody listen. I refuse to believe anyone ever liked Lex Luger. Anyway, like at any point, I don't believe anyone ever did. And if you did, you're lying.
There was maybe a time around. Now it was obviously massively like engineered and convoluted. There was maybe a time around the Lex Express when there was a chance he might have gotten over as a babyface.
Was this in 1994?
Yeah.
Yeah, this was 9 years later.
Yeah, this is 2000. But if we're talking ever, ever,
well, that's fair. But I mean, imagine like again, Goldberg is your main talent. He's the only guy you have, and you're like, we're going to get him beaten by an L lad who's falling apart.
Well, and the worst thing about this match was that so it was Goldberg and Sargent, the trainer from the power plant, versus Lex Luger and Buff Bagwell. And even if Sargent got beaten, Goldberg lost his job. So they could have done the same angle, but they still pinned Goldberg.
I mean,
They didn't even pin Sargent. Now, the only thing I will say about this is not in this match, not in this storyline, but
yeah,
I actually really liked the ending where Luger is like accosting a fan who's wearing a Goldberg t-shirt,
yeah,
and like Goldberg comes out to like kind of rescue the fan and picks him up off the ground. And he's like, "Oh, thanks, man!" And then he pulls out a thing of mace and he sprays it in Goldberg's eyes.
yeah. That was good.
And then the security came rushing in, and they didn't wrestle, they didn't throw big punches or anything. They just banged this guy down to the ground and bent his arms and legs and held him down. And it looked so real. For a second, it looked so real. And if WCW had any sense, they would have left it at that.
Yeah.
And then maybe on Nitro the next night, Luger could have come out with the fan and been like, "Oh, it was a work all along." But
or what they could have done there is they could have been like, the match is end, the match is called off. They're like, they come out and they're like, we've done it, we've got rid of Goldberg. Ha ha ha, didn't we do it? And then it builds up that return to Goldberg coming back. Because if he is injured, it goes, oh, he's never going to wrestle again. We've beaten him. And then in a month later or whatever, come back. That would be better because you have the hatred for Lex Luger. You have the, and then the massive return. No. Let's just beat him cleanly in the ring.
But the thing was that the thing with the fan, it was done so well and it looked so real, right?
Yeah.
But then Luger came running over and pulled the security guards off the van and was like shaking his hand and high-fiving and like, haha, we got him. And I'm like, oh, you've ruined like for a minute there, it looked really real. It looked like you had a really hot angle, but you had to like, pantomime telegraph that it was a plant, like I say, like you were saying, you could have done that the next night on Nitro or,
I mean,
but I think in a different storyline, I think that's a pretty cool wee trick, that
hindsight, hindsight is what it is. But I mean, even at this point, Bischoff was writing it. You think he would have had a bit more sense to be like, actually, we probably shouldn't kill our main star. But they did, and I mean, it leads perfectly into the main
I
event.
tell you, just before we get to the main event, so after the match, the camera really lingers, like.
Yeah, everyone was bummed out. Everyone was actually properly upset, like.
And it's Goldberg's like wiping the mace out of his eyes, and everyone's really upset. But at one stage, the commentators are going, "Oh, this is terrible." Goldberg, after we lost the NWO and we fell behind, Goldberg was carrying this company. Goldberg was going to make us number one again. And I'm like, oh my God, lads, like this is really like you're really exposing what's going on here,
Like, hey, we got bought last week.
Like, I think a lot of guys knew what was happening.
Yeah, I mean, it's depressing. It really is. Like, again, if you ever wanted to see, like, this should be taught in colleges. What a depressing ending is like. So look, the main event again.
Oh, sorry, and very quickly, the other thing about that match was that during the pay-per-view, Flair had come out.
Oh God.
And he'd made a big song and dance about how the Goldberg match was now going to be no disqualification, as if we hadn't just seen 4 or 5 bloody matches in a row where illegal stuff happened right in front of the referee, and he just didn't react to it. Like, no disqualification at this stage of the pay-per-view, it just means nothing. It has no. So in the matches that aren't no DQ, all sorts of illegal stuff is happening from the ref, and he's not doing anything. In the one bloody chain match that is no DQ, the guy is like hiding a weapon in his knee pad as if he's gonna get. This is just topsy turvy land.
But maybe it's like when who was it? It was one of the wrestlers in WWE. Actually, you see it in TNA as well, where they'd be in a reverse ladder match and they go for a pin, and you're like, "What are you doing? Stop trying to pin him." Maybe it was just like habit. I don't know.
Macho Man in the Royal Rumble trying to pin
Yokozuna. Yes, he's also, but you see it all the time in TNA. All right, the main event. So does this sound appetizing or not? Right, Sid Vicious already answers no. Jeff Jarrett, the former 4-time world champion for some reason, which is astounding. This man was in a Good Housekeeping match less than a year before this with China, lost. And I like Jeff Jarrett, but a world champion at this point, he was not. Scott Steiner, the only man who looked like he cared throughout the whole night in the main roster, and then Road Warrior Animal. Holy hell!
The big surprise.
Big surprise. I mean, again, should have been Norman Smiley. Anybody,
anyone,
literally anybody.
Anyone.
I mean,
I
anybody.
don't know why I had it in my head that it was going to be
Sting,
Booker T, because he wasn't on the show yet.
Yeah, he had beef as well. I mean, here's one. What you could have done is you could have went and got someone from ECW. You could have got one of the WWE guys who were left off, like anybody. But you bring back the Road Warrior, like singularly, a Road Warrior, not the Road Warriors.
So not even like they're like the Young Bucks. They're famous as a team.
Yeah.
And also, you're like, okay, we're gonna bring back half of the Road Warriors, but to really up the ante, we are going to dress him in a weird gimp mask.
Which was very weird. That was very strange. I mean, but look, The whole thing was bizarre. It was 8 minutes of nonsense. Like, I was looking at the time and I'm like, I guess they're not going to show up anybody. What's going on? And then it cuts to the back, and your man walks out in his little outfit, and then it's revealed that it's the Road Warrior, and they do the whole, oh, what side is he on? And then they all attack. Sid Vicious. And it's weird is Jeff Jarrett celebrating on the outside, and you're like, what happened?
What are you doing?
What are you doing? You lost too. He's celebrating, and you're like, what is going on?
So this match starts, and Ric Flair comes out and he says, I said I have a surprise for you, but I didn't say when I had a surprise for you. So this guy isn't going to be in the match from the start, which is stupid, because what if somebody gets pinned before he comes out?
2 minutes.
So that's stupid for a start. Then, we'll talk about Sid's leg in a minute. But then what actually happens is he comes out and he delivers one kick. That's it. He comes out and Sid's laying on the ground.
That's the difference maker. The one kick.
Sid's laying on the ground with a literally broken leg. And your man comes out and kicks him. And
he wasn't getting up anyway.
And then no, he wasn't. Look, you can't account for injuries.
But I mean, at that point, you would have called an audible and been like, "Look,
if he was laying there going, oh my god, my leg's really sore," you would go, okay, the ref will go, okay, look, just pin him or get him out of the ring and pin Jarrett.
Yeah.
But he is laying there. I don't know, for anyone who hasn't seen this video, he is laying there with his leg hanging off.
It's literally the wrong way around.
It looks like something out of a horror film. It's horrendous.
Yeah.
It's easily the worst wrestling injury you've ever seen. He's laying there in the middle of the ring, and they're having this match around him, and then Scott Steiner knows that the surprise is coming up, so he can't pin him.
Yeah.
Jeff Jarrett's laying on the ground outside the ring. Sid is laying there, physically broken, unable to move.
Yeah.
And Scott's Big Papa Pump is walking around Sid, stamping on his shoulder and stuff.
I'm watching this again to see if you can see when it happened.
I think it's such a gruesome if there's anybody listening who hasn't seen just go into YouTube and type Sid leg break.
Yeah, so it's not actually. I think they might have actually removed it from the network because
I think the network went back and edited it because it is so horrific.
Yeah, because what happens is he throws Double J out. Actually, that explains why it's so confusing. So when I was watching it, he throws him he throws Double J over the barricade, right? And then a hard cuts to him in the ring with his leg the wrong way around. So I mean, that's
what happens is he did it was either a top rope or a mid rope. It was I don't know what he was going for, a drop kick, and maybe he got scared halfway through and put his leg down. But basically what ends up happening is he jumps from either the top or the middle rope and lands on one leg.
And man.
He's a massive guy, so instantly the leg just breaks. And it's so horrible. It doesn't break at a joint or anything. It breaks right in the middle of the shin bone, because you can see it. You can see where it's hanging off. There's a brilliant bit where he's laying there in the ground and he's trying to lift his leg, so the upper part of his leg lifts, but the broken bit just hangs there to the side, completely dead. And you hear Tony Schiavone going, "Oh, I think he might have injured his leg." It's hanging off him.
Oh, it's wonderful. I mean, it's wonderful in the worst possible way. I mean, but it's still actually, to find it now. It is on Daily Motion if you want to see it, and you can see it happen. And oh my god, there it is. Oh, it's so manky.
Oh, it's horrific.
It's horrific.
Oh, but that's the thing. It's such a horrible injury. It's so awful. For the love of God, somebody call an audible.
Oh my god. Oh my god, it's so horrible looking.
Somebody get him out of the ring and have the referee go over to Jeff Jarrett and say, "Hey, listen, Animal's going to come in here and hit you with a DDT or a bulldog or something, and you take the pin."
I mean, he's not kicking out of anything.
No, it's the fact that for the next 4 minutes they make him lay in the ring while Scott Steiner stomps on him until Animal can amble his fat arse down the ring to stomp on him one more time.
It's such. Oh my god! It's so. What? Damn you, WWE, for cutting that out of the network. Horrible. But I mean, god.
Maybe they'll put it back on the network now that they're apparently going to PG-14.
I mean, yeah, it's all the it's like the episode of Simpsons, sports worst injuries.
Do you know what they should do? The week they go TV 14. Do you know that then now forever thing at the start? They should put Sig's leg breaking into the then footage. Then, and it's like Hulk Hogan and Bret Hart and Sid's leg.
The wrong way. Guys, you can find it on Daily Motion. It's one of the most horrendous things you'll ever see. It's so manky, but at the same time, on the network when you're watching it, he lifts his leg and it just flops. It's just hanging there. So, I mean, look, calling an audible in this would have made a lot more sense.
To get the clearly the guy with the war injury, get him out of the ring and pin Jeff Jarrett.
Yeah, I mean, what's so bizarre is Jarrett is celebrating the outside, and he never established that him and Steiner were mates. So it just kind of happens, and you're like, what is going on here?
It's like from start to finish. The one thing I'll say about this is you are never bored during this pay-per-view because you are just confused.
Well, look,
you can't be confused and bored.
So in 2007, our mate Arnold Furious of 411 Wrestling gave the event a rating of 4.5. Poor, stating, quote, "The undercard has so much hard work in it. 2 great cruiserweight matches in the first half and a solid hardcore match," which is true. Yeah. Basically, everyone who had the chance to move up the card tried really, really hard. The main event guys strolled out there and dogged in matches riddled with stupid booking. Sid broke his leg. Goldberg's out of this WCW forever. Early on, Steiner had taken one of WCW's earlier on, Steiner had taken out one of WCW's baby faces. There's really only Nash and DDP left, and they jobbed to a bunch of rookie mid-carders. True. The direction
and they didn't care.
No, the direction of the company was once again embarrassing. Way to go, Eric Bischoff. Turn that company around! ! It's all pretty depressing. Luckily enough, WCW died 2 months later, and now no one has to watch it. Yay! End quote. I mean, it's a bit bitter, man.
I mean, it's like we said.
I mean, I had a good time.
It all depends on how you're viewing this. If you're viewing this in the context of what WWF was doing at the time, this is pitiful.
Man, listen, you're not going to see anyone else break their leg like that on WWE.
But
come to WCW, where top stars break their leg in horrendous ways.
If you view it like if you're just looking at it as a series of matches, I mean, there's some good matches. There's even the bad matches. There's some good moments. Yeah. Like even this dreadful main event, it still has Big Papa Pump. He's class. I have gained since doing this podcast. I have gained a whole new appreciation for Scott Steiner.
Scott Steiner's the best.
Is so good. He knows exactly what his gimmick is, exactly what his role is, and he is so good at it.
He is. He's one of the best. He really is.
It's to sound like an idiot, but he does it amazingly.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, look, I wouldn't be so harsh with my review of it. I would say, look, it's 4.5 stars. The first half of the show was actually really good, and then it dips. It's basically Thunder with some more stuff stapled to it. And the stuff that's stapled to it is so bizarrely puzzling that you're like, what is going on? Again, if you want to see that leg break, it's hilarious. You have to find it on Dailymotion. But yeah, Martin, have you got anything to plug before we get out of here this week?
Yeah, I'm going to start a petition. I want the leg break in the then now forever montage at the start of every WWE program.
So you got to start it on Twitter. So hashtag save the leg. Save the leg break.
Hashtag Sid's leg. Yeah.
Sid's
It's a hashtag
Folks,
dead
if
leg.
you're listening to the show, hashtag Sid's leg. Let's get it trending for a 21-year-old thing that happened on WCW that nobody watched.
Yeah. We're gonna get it because
get it trending.
it's TV PG-14, whatever it is. We're gonna get it in the opening montage.
Hashtag Sid's leg. I'm also going to push that. James Truepenny, if you're listening, hashtag Sid's leg, because we want that trending. We want to get the whole network pushing it. Guys, thank you so much for listening to us here on Phoenix 92.5 FM. Again, if this is your first time checking out the show, I'm sorry. But also, thank you so much for joining us. Please go over check out our social media. TheWrestlingRewind.com is where you'll be able to find a link to everything that we have, our YouTube, our Spotify, all that kind of stuff. It's all there. So again, until next week, I've been Darragh, he's been Martin, hashtag save Dave, and we'll talk to you here on The Wrestling Rewind. Bye guys.
Sid's leg.
Thank you for listening to a Nerd to Know Media production.